And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, in conjunction with our broadcast partners at Tri-X 57. We are still in the depths of winter here. Valentine's Day is coming up, and, Valentine's Day is on a Saturday this weekend. That means avoid all the restaurants, right, Palma?
I don't know. I like any excuse to go out to dinner, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're telling me you have a reservation on Valentine's Day?
I didn't make a reservation.
Somebody made one for you. Is that fair to say? All right, we'll see. All right.
No, I don't know. I'd be happy just staying at home though, because it is very crowded.
It is
big holidays.
I think I actually will be going out on Valentine's Day, but I'll be going to the Sawmill in Seaside Park because I'm emceeing Cupid's Chase 5K, which is a 5K race that it's to raise money for adults with disabilities, and it's Cupid's Chase and so this year it's on Valentine's Day. I've emceed this race a few years and it's never on Valentine's Day. This is the year, so maybe I'll sit by myself at the bar and order some tuna bites or something on Valentine's Day. All right. Our topic this week has nothing to do with Valentine's Day, unless Eric Mischell can find a connection for us here. But we have him on today to talk about observed trends in extreme precipitation and convective intensity under global warming. Convective intensity, think of thunderstorms, for example. That would be convective intensity. He is a PhD student at the University of Miami, and he is from New Jersey. He is from Cranberry, New Jersey. He decided to go down south of Florida way before he retired. Maybe a good choice, Eric, when we're talking to you in the middle of winter here, but welcome to Tidal Flooding Talk.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So we'll just get this out of the way. Cranberry, what part of New Jersey is that in?
I'm here to talk about climate and climate change.
Okay.
I don't want to wade into any contentious issues.
You're actually, I think, the second person in 3 weeks who has made a very similar comment. So,
okay.
You guys are getting smart on No, but in all seriousness, it's great to have you on here. I think extreme precipitation, at least from a New Jersey perspective, has really entered consciousness, specifically with Ida that we had in 2021. We had another, extreme precipitation event just 2 years later. Of course, you're looking at not just New Jersey, but everywhere on this. Tell us, how about start with this here? What inspired you to do this kind of research specifically? You are a doctoral student in meteorology now. You had an environmental science degree before. What got you interested in this field of meteorology?
Sure. So I am a doctoral student, and my research has touched on a few different aspects of Earth's climate. And so by climate we mean kind of the statistics of weather, anything, the average of weather events on large spatial or time scales. And I got interested in this. First I started looking at mid-latitude weather. So things like mid-latitude cyclones and those familiar warm and cold fronts that pass through New Jersey, especially this time of year.
Yeah.
But down here in Miami, looking out the window and experiencing some pretty abrupt changes in weather and extreme precipitation that can kind of come and go on a dime. That's kind of how I got interested in this topic. And there've been there's a general feeling that extreme rainfall events are getting more severe or more damaging. Here in Florida, there was a rainfall event in Fort Lauderdale back in 2023 that dropped about 2 feet of rain in 12 hours, and of course there was the devastating rains and floods in Texas this summer. So all those things kind of got me interested in looking at this question from kind of a global climate perspective.
And when people hear extreme precipitation, what does that actually mean in real life?
Sure, sure. So for my research and the study that Joe was referring to, we defined extreme precipitation as exceeding 10 millimeters per hour, so about half an inch an hour, and so that's the rate at which the rain is accumulating, and that was our threshold.
Let me ask you this, and half inch per hour. Usually, when I think of extreme precipitation, I'm thinking 1-2 inches per hour. Is there a reason why you did choose a half inch for that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, there can be, there's a wide distribution of rain rates. We picked this one, this criteria, basically based on a statistical analysis. So this was, we collected a whole bunch of observations of rainfall in the tropics, and we over a long period of time, and we found the 99th percentile was about half an inch an hour. So we said, okay, this is a convenient point, and we'll look at everything, beyond that half an inch. So, but yeah.
So did you find that? Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead, Palm. Do it.
Did you find that these heavy rain events were either more frequent or just more intense?
Yeah, that's right. So we were looking specifically at the frequency of those events. And so we looked at satellite observations of rainfall over the tropics over the last 40 years. And we found that over that period, the frequency of heavy rainfall events, so those events where the rain rate exceeded about half an inch an hour, increased by about 30%. So a pretty sizable amount. So we focused on the frequency piece.
And I'm reading your abstract here at the report. You found that moderate rainfall events have decreased in frequency in the tropics by 1.7% per decade. So is it something where the overall rain or precipitation in a year is getting higher, and more of that's just coming from these bigger events? I mean, that seems to be that's kind of the way I'm reading this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's kind of this idea that overall, when you add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, the average rain rate should increase, but it probably increases at a fairly modest rate. So what was interesting about our study was that even though the average rainfall was pretty close to level or slightly increasing over the period, we found that there was this kind of compensation between a kind of big increase in heavy rain and then a decrease in more moderate or lighter rainfall events. And that kind of compensation led to a very small rise in the average, but could still have pretty profound effects.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take our first break here. We'll come back on the other side here on Tidal Flooding Talk. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and we would like to remind our viewers to prepare before the storm. Flooding can happen quickly. Prepare ahead of time by creating a disaster plan, assembling a go bag, and signing up for emergency alerts. Make sure your family knows evacuation routes and communication plans. Preparation saves lives.
Awesome. And we are back with Eric Mischell. We're talking about observe trends in extreme precipitation under global warming. I want to take a step back here, and you were kind of touching on it in the last segment, but can you explain for our listeners here the water cycle and how greenhouse gas emissions contribute, and the kind of climate change we're seeing contributes to this?
Sure. So kind of the basic picture is greenhouse gases, things like carbon dioxide and methane, are released into the atmosphere through through natural emissions, but also increasingly through human emissions. And those gases are called greenhouse gases. They're heat trapping, and so that leads to a warming of surface temperatures across the Earth, and this includes warming of the ocean surface, and that leads to think of cranking up the temperature on a pot of water. You'll start boiling off more of that water as steam. It's sort of a similar idea here. You'll increase the moisture, the water vapor content of the atmosphere, and that has really important implications for the water cycle, including increase in rain events and from our study, heavy rain events.
Thank you. I like that. I could picture that actually a lot easier now. So I know you do keep saying we. So who was a part of your team for this study? And what was your main takeaway that you wanted people to get out of it?
Sure. My team, my collaborator was my advisor, Dr. Brian Soden. He's a professor here at the University of Miami. And I would say that our main takeaway was that the frequency of heavy rainfall events in the tropics has increased by about 8% per year for the last 4 decades, so about 30% overall. And that's important because it's not always been clear what effect global warming will have or has had on extreme rain. We have some idea that the warming of surface temperature should increase moisture and the rain rate on average, but it hasn't always been clear how this would translate into the most severe rainstorms. And so that's kind of our contribution, is looking at the past and seeing how that's changed and what might the implications be for the future.
So, I think you went back to 1987 for this, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And why in 1987? What was that reason?
Sure. So our observations of the rain rate came from satellites, and the earliest reliable estimates of rainfall from space come from this instrument called the Special Sensor Microwave Imager, or the SSMI, and that's been flying on several generations of Defense Department satellites, beginning in 1987 to the present day. So that's these satellite based estimates. These are obviously different than our conventional rainfall measurements from things like rain gauges outside. These are it's a different technology, but the advantage is that we can have this kind of global coverage and see things in places like over the oceans where where human beings don't live and can't measure the rainfall. So.
Now, did anything in the data surprise you when you saw the trends?
Yeah, I think we're not necessarily expecting to see increases of this of this size, and there was kind of a notion that the average rainfall would kind of increase at a moderate rate, and we weren't really sure how the rest of the distribution of events from light to moderate to heavy would change. And having these kind of trends emerge in this robust way is we weren't sure that we would find that. We have close to 40 years of data now from these satellites, but there's a lot of variability in weather and climate, as we all know, experience day to day. And so sometimes these trends aren't always apparent in that variability. So,
is there anything you could say about the precipitable water values with this? Can you explain, for if the answer is yes, or even if it's no, explain what precipitable water is to everybody?
Yeah,
Sure.
Maybe start with that.
Yeah, let's start.
Yeah.
I know. I started saying, I was like, we got to explain this first. But go ahead, Eric. You can. I'm sure you do a better job.
Yeah, precipitable water is it's a measure of the moisture in the atmosphere, and basically, there's the humidity. That's that's a word that we've all heard in the weather context. It's a measure of how much water vapor is in the air. And so if we think about how the process of rain formation, it kind of has to do with two factors. First we have the moisture, the humidity that's close to the surface, and then we have some rising motion of air that lifts that moist, humid air up to a higher level in the atmosphere. And there it expands and cools to a certain point where it cools to a temperature where it can become saturated. It can't hold that moisture anymore, so the moisture condenses to form clouds and rain. And so we can also measure that precipitable water, that moisture content from space, from the same satellites, and kind of looking at the ratio of the rain rate to that moisture content, we can get some inference of what that rising motion of air, kind of that rate that the air rises in the atmosphere, and that's an important quantity for atmospheric scientists, and something we're interested in.
Got it. Okay. What about snow? Is there anything you can tell us about snow with this? Any thunder snow, convective snow for us?
He's not thinking about it where he is.
We kind of confined our analysis to the tropics, but there's even in the tropics, if you reach these thunderstorms that are very intense and reach to very high levels in the atmosphere, they do rise to the freezing level. So the water does freeze and can form things like hail, and ice can reach the surface in intense thunderstorms here.
Sure.
With our the current instrument that we were using to measure this doesn't give much insight on that on that particular measurement. But
yeah, no problem. I figured not, but I thought it was always good to ask. We're going to take one more break here. We'll come back with our last segment with Eric on Tidal Flooding Talk.
Atlantic City Restaurant Week, reimagined. Join us this March for the month-long culinary celebration, showcasing the city's diverse and vibrant dining scene, offering a delicious opportunity for both locals and visitors to savor the best of Atlantic City's flavors. Taste Atlantic City's 48 blocks of endless flavor.
A big thank you to Eric for his time here as he talked all about extreme precipitation trends. Good to have another Jersey guy on the show. We actually didn't know that he was a Jersey guy until he popped on. We knew he did good work. He knew he was at the University of Miami, but not New Jersey. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up for this episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. You can find new episodes every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We have episodes scheduled all the way until the middle of March. You can find us then. Thanks for watching, everybody, and take care.